Lone Cowboy gifted a paralyzed woman as a joke. He raised her to frontier pride. Blood slid from Caleb Walker's bruised knuckles, pattering onto the sawdust floor like a ticking clock. The dusty Spur saloon, thick with cigar smoke and kerosene heat, froze around him. Pete Albright lay groaning beside an overturned poker table, cursing through a broken nose. "You yellow dog," Pete spat, voice muffled by the handkerchief pressed to his face. "Sam would still be breathing if you stood your ground against them, Kiowa." The words cut deeper than any fist. Caleb's mind flashed to that May afternoon. 15 painted riders cresting the rise, the snap of arrow feathers, Sam's scream as Caleb dove behind a boulder and stayed there. The shame sat heavy, a horseshoe on his chest. His chairs scraped back. 3 ranch hands fanned out, palms hovering over iron. Caleb flexed stiff fingers, feeling the crowd's verdict settle like dust on a coffin lid. Coward. "Easy, boys." A drawl slid through the tension. Rowdy Barnes sauntered in, hat cocked rakishly, grin wide as a fresh grave. "Bar fight's done. Walker's paid enough." Rowdy's arrival dispersed the would-be avengers. Most preferred their beer to bullets. He slung an arm around Caleb's shoulders, steering him outside into the late evening glare. Main Street baked under a July sun, wind carrying the smell of hot leather and horse sweat. "Appreciate the rescue," Caleb muttered. Rowdy laughed. "Rescue? I'm here to solve your problems, friend." His grin sharpened. "There's a lady needs a husband, quick, and you need every dime you can scrounge." Caleb frowned. "Heard this joke before." "Not a joke. Eleanor McKinley, banker's daughter, stagecoach flipped, spine crushed. Family'll pay $50 and a gold watch to any man fool enough, bold enough, to marry her. You sign, they wash their hands. Everybody wins." The offer tasted of desperation and dust. $50 could patch the leaky roof, maybe buy new cattle. Yet Rowdy's smile, more rattlesnake than friend, made Caleb's skin crawl. Still, loneliness gnawed louder than caution. 5 miles east waited an empty shack, a silent hearth, and the memory of Sam dying alone. Caleb swallowed the metallic tang of shame. Bring her. Dawn painted the prairie lavender when Rowdy's wagon creaked up Caleb's rickety porch. Eleanor McKinley lay on a thin mattress beneath canvas. Red gold hair spilled over the pillow, green eyes steady and unafraid. Caleb tipped his hat, voice rough. "Ma'am." Rowdy handled the introductions like a circus barker, shoving a leather pouch into Caleb's palm, the payment clinking inside. "1-year trial. You quit, money's yours anyway." Eleanor studied Caleb's battered hand, then his haunted eyes. "They told you I can't walk?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you still agree?" Caleb hesitated only a breath. "We'll manage." A flicker, half gratitude, half resignation, passed across her face. Together, Caleb and Rowdy's hired hand lifted her wheelchair down, set trunks on the lopsided porch. Rowdy swung into the saddle. "Good luck, you two lovebirds." His laughter trailed behind the departing horses. On a distant butte, 3 silhouettes watched, rifles glinting in the newborn sun. Caleb felt the hairs rise on his neck. First light, fresh start, yet danger already circled. As the wagon dust settles, the tallest watcher lowers his spyglass. "Tell Kincaid," he growls. "The coward just got himself a cripple, and $50. The iron stew pot crashed to the floor, scattering red beans across warped planks as Eleanor's wheelchair clipped the stove. Thunder rattled the tiny cabin a heartbeat later. "Apologies," she muttered, cheeks burning. Caleb wiped sweat from his brow, setting aside the handsaw he'd used to widen the doorway. Blisters stung, but the sight of Eleanor maneuvering without scraping her knuckles made every splinter worthwhile. "We'll fix the counter height tomorrow," he said. "No more acrobatics." Outside, wind howled across the prairie, driving a wall of midnight clouds. Lightning revealed the new ramp he'd hammered together. Rough but sturdy, proof of a partnership neither had planned. They worked until the lamp guttered. Rain slapped the shingles. The smell of wet sage drifted through chinks in the chinking. Caleb bolted shutters while Eleanor tucked a quilt around her legs. The storm's roar drowned ordinary sounds, yet a different thud, heavy, deliberate, vibrated through the door. Caleb's pulse hammered. He snuffed the lamp, whispering, "Loose board, third from the wall." Eleanor rolled to her bunk with practiced calm, fingers finding the hidden Colt Navy her father once kept beneath a mercantile counter. 6 chambers, freshly oiled. Another thud, then a voice syrup-thick and mocking. "Evening, Walker. Heard you got yourself a treasure. Girl can't run and 50 Yankee dollars." Caleb eased the Winchester from its rack, forcing air into tight lungs. Reed Kincaid, scar-slashed and notorious, stepped into a lightning flash, 2 men flanking him beneath dripping slickers. "We're wet and hungry," Kincaid called. "Open up polite or we cut the door off its hinges." "Town's downriver," Caleb replied. "Plenty of dry rooms." Kincaid laughed. "Town's got sheriffs and questions. You don't." He kicked the latch. Wood splintered. The coward in Caleb, cold creature that once hid behind a rock, hissed, "Run! Not this time." The door burst. Muzzle flash stuttered blue-white. A bullet punched the mantel where Caleb's head had been. He fired once, driving the intruder sideways. A second outlaw lunged. Overturning the table, Caleb grappled, taste of iron in his mouth. "Caleb, left!" Eleanor's warning cut through thunder. She leveled the Colt, squeezed. The slug tore through the attacker's thigh. He screamed, dropping his revolver. Kincaid pivoted toward her, eyes gleaming with cruel certainty, until the cabin blazed with lamplight from outside. "Turner, drop him!" Sheriff Amos Turner and 2 deputies filled the doorway, rifles trained steady. Kincaid froze. Rain hissed on hot barrels. Handcuffs snapped. Turner nodded at Caleb's bleeding lip. "Looks like you finally stood your ground." Caleb swallowed, adrenaline shaking his bones. But it was pride, not fear, that trembled inside him. As the deputies hauled the wounded men into the storm, Kincaid twisted free long enough to sneer at Caleb. "This ain't over. Crow don't need darkness or rain. He'll come broad daylight, papers in hand, and gut you slow." Turner shoved him forward. The knights swallowed their lanterns. On the floor near the dropped revolver lay a water-spotted calling card. Silas Crow, Plains Mercantile Association. Caleb slipped it into his pocket, lightning stroking the prairie beyond the ramp he had built. Evidence that both the home and the man inside it were no longer designed for running. Wagon wheels rattled over fresh-laid planks, lining up like iron locusts in the noon heat. Caleb wiped sawdust from his sleeves and stared, half amazed, at the queue snaking outside the new Walker McKinley trading post. 2 rooms of whitewash, a broad porch, and aisles wide enough for Eleanor's chair to glide without touching a shelf. Captain Jasper Barnes swung down first, dusting trail grime from his coat. "Friend, your jerked beef kept 20 mules on their feet through the Cimarron crossing. Got a full order if you can fill it." Caleb's chest swelled. 3 months earlier, he'd been Kansas gossip, a coward hitched to a cripple. Now word of fair prices and kind credit drew drovers, homesteaders, even Cheyenne scouts hunting salt. The prairie felt less empty, the whispers of shame drowned by barter and laughter. But prosperity carried a sulfur scent. Late afternoon, a polished buggy arrived, wheels sparkling like false promises. Silas Crow climbed out, bleached mustache, silk waistcoat, and unfurled a parchment thick with red seals. "Afternoon, Mr. Walker," Crow purred. "Kansas Territorial Mercantile Board regrets to inform you of deficiencies." Caleb's gut tightened. Customers hushed as Crow listed them. Unscreened flour, improper scales, absence of a Class C commerce permit, a document Caleb had never heard of. Fines $200 due in 10 days, store closure pending. Eleanor rolled forward, ledger balanced on her lap. "May I?" Her voice carried past sacks of beans and bolts of calico. She flipped pages, each line neat as railroad ties. "We purchased flour from Whitlock Mill, inspected last month by your own agent." She pointed at Crow's signature, reproduced in ink. Murmurs rippled. Crow's smile thinned. Sheriff Turner, alerted by the growing crowd, strode in, spurs clinking. He scanned the ledger, then Crow's summons. "Silas, this permit doesn't exist," he said, "and these fines are triple the statutory limit." Crow's eyes flashed. "Clerical oversight. I'll amend the paperwork. He tipped his hat, but Caleb saw flint behind the politeness. Crow hadn't hoped to amend. He'd hoped to crush. 2 nights later, rancid stench rolled from behind the store. Caleb found 30 sacks of spoiled flour split open, flies thick as coal dust. A painted sign leaned against the pile. Walker Goods spread sickness. Anger boiled, but Eleanor's whisper cut through it. Document, don't destroy. They summoned Turner. Witnesses sniffed the sour mess, confirmed no spoiled stock had left the post. By sundown, Crow's smear lay as failed as his fines. Customers returned in greater numbers, waving coins in quiet rebellion. Yet victory tasted fragile. At dusk, Caleb rode the perimeter, unease riding pillion. In town, lamplight leaked from the back window of the Golden Bison Hotel. Inside, Rowdy Barnes nursed whiskey opposite Silas Crow. Caleb dismounted in shadow, listening through cracked boards. Paper won't stop 'em, Rowdy slurred. Your brother's freight captain is their mouthpiece now. Crow struck a match, flame reflecting in his eyes. Then we'll trade ink for kerosene. He closed the matchbook slowly, as though savoring the idea. A spark in the right wall, prairie wind does the rest. Caleb stepped back, heart drumming. He had rebuilt once. Could he shield Eleanor and everything they'd created from a fire set on purpose? Behind him, the trading post lamps glowed warm, unaware of the storm now gathering without thunder or rain. Flames painted the midnight prairie a savage orange, roaring higher than the windmill. Caleb spurred his mare hard, hooves pounding like war drums as sparks twisted into the sky. He'd only ridden to Dodge Creek for mail, gone scarcely 2 hours. Now everything they'd built crackled and caved before his eyes. Eleanor sat in her wheelchair 20 yards from the inferno, hair whipping, barking orders with a banker's precision. Henderson, form a line from the well. Mrs. Johnson, soak quilts for the porch. The little trading post, whitewashed pride of the valley, was already half skeleton, windows spitting glass like angry spirits. Caleb slid from the saddle and seized a bucket. Heat slapped him in the face, the smell of scorched flour and lamp oil unmistakable. Kerosene, he thought. Crow kept his promise. Planks popped. The roof sagged. Ember constellations tumbling across the porch, where Eleanor had once greeted travelers with coffee and ledgers. She met Caleb's gaze through the smoke. No panic, only fierce determination that stole his breath. Neighbors kept coming. Blacksmith Jeb, schoolmarm Lucy, itinerant preacher O'Brien. Buckets flew hand to hand. Steam hissed, but the blaze refused surrender. When the front sign collapsed in a shower of sparks, Eleanor shouted, "Pull back! Save yourselves!" Caleb's muscles ached. Lungs scorched raw. He forced himself to watch the last wall tumble, wood screeching like a dying steer. Dawn crept over blackened beams, revealing a ruin still smoldering, still hot enough to warp iron nails. Sheriff Turner arrived at first light, hat in hand, face gray with anger. Found this wedged in the alley behind Crow's Mercantile. He held up a half-empty coal oil bottle. Caleb's jaw clenched. Enough for arson charges? Depends who tossed it. Crow's vanished, took the midnight stage west. Footprints, heel prints made by fancy town boots, peppered the mud behind the store. But amid them, Caleb spotted a different mark, a broken horseshoe nail, distinctive crescent. Rowdy Barnes' sorrel left that signature everywhere it trod. 2 days later, Captain Jasper Barnes drove his freight wagon into town with Rowdy trussed in the back like stolen cattle. A marshal from Millerville rode beside him. "Caught your boy trying to peddle goods still smelling of smoke," Jasper said, voice heavy with familial shame. "Figured you'd want him returned." Rowdy's grin was gone, replaced by a bruise blossoming purple under one eye. He spat at Caleb's boots. "Crow paid me to haul what was left. Course, soon as he smelled trouble, he bolted." Turner locked Rowdy in the town cell, charges longer than a church sermon. Yet the victory felt hollow. Black ruin still scarred the homestead. And the $50 dowry, everything they'd once possessed, lay melted into the dirt. Grief lasted until sunrise of day 4, when a hammer struck a charred joist and echoed across the valley. Caleb lifted it again, driving the nail clean. Eleanor sat on the porch of their untouched cabin. Sketches unfurled across her lap. Blueprints wider, brighter, bolder. "We rebuild," she said simply, "but bigger. 2 aisles for dry goods, one for tools, a ramp straight through the heart so no traveler finds a doorway they can't cross." News traveled faster than crows. By noon, wagons ringed the clearing like wagons at a trail camp. Henderson brought pine beams he'd milled for a barn not yet started. Lucy arrived with a pot of nails collected from every homestead. Even stern Pastor O'Brien hefted a saw. Day melted into a rhythm of hammers, laughter, and the hiss of green lumber meeting sun. Each board that rose felt like a hymn against despair. At dusk, Eleanor wheeled through the skeletal frame, fingertips brushing fresh timber. "It's breathing already," she whispered. Weeks later, the new facade gleamed under a coat of prairie white paint. A broad cedar ribbon waited to be cut. Mayor Grant polishing oversized shears for the grand opening. Caleb adjusted his best vest, pride and nerves dueling in his chest. From a distant ridge, unseen behind tawny grass, Silas Crow chambered a round into a long-barreled rifle. The scope glinted, catching a shard of dawn, as he aligned it with the porch where Eleanor would soon sit. Caleb, tying a red kerchief beside the ribbon, felt a prickling at the back of his neck, the same instinct that once saved him from arrow flight. He scanned the horizon but saw only wheat gold sunrise. The band struck a chord, townsfolk cheered, and a finger tightened on cold steel far away. The ribbon fluttered. Mayor Grant raised his shears. Caleb's breath misted, summer heat gone cold, when a distant muzzle flash winked like devil's eye. Crack. The cedar post beside Eleanor exploded, splinters striking her cheek. She didn't flinch. The Colt was already in her hand. Crowd panic surged, but Caleb's world narrowed to 2 points: the ridge and his wife's steady barrel. Another flash. Eleanor fired once. A rifle clanged, spinning into grass. Silas Crow toppled from his perch, clutching a grazed shoulder, rage replaced by shock. Sheriff Turner and Captain Barnes sprinted upslope. Caleb knelt at Eleanor's chair. A thin bloodline traced her cheekbone, no more than a paper cut. He exhaled for the first time since the shot. "I told you," she whispered, lips quirking. "Practice never leaves the bones." Crow's trial lasted 2 sweltering days. Rowdy's confession, barn ledgers of bribes, and that sniper round sealed the verdict. 10 years hard labor. More importantly, his conviction silenced whispers. Proof that fair trade, not fear, would rule Dodge Creek. The trading post thrived. Freight wagons beat a new path. The territorial mail service stamped W&M station on every route map. At night, travelers traded stories under kerosene light while Eleanor tallied numbers, and Caleb checked horse tack. The cabin's porch now alive with violin music and tin cup coffee. 3 years later, Denver, Colorado territory. Caleb sat in the front row of the marble-clad assembly hall, suit collar strangling, pride buoying him above nerves. Eleanor rolled to the podium beneath gas chandeliers. The room hushed. Bankers, ranch barons, and Congress delegates all leaned forward. "My husband and I were once considered liabilities," she began, voice clear as mountain water. "A coward and a cripple," so the headline said. Polite laughter tinged with shame rippled. "Yet out on the plains, we learned value is measured by how wide a door you build, not how narrow a mind you keep." She unrolled parchment, the Walker Fair Trade Act, ink shimmering. "This statute punishes intimidation, caps predatory freight fees, and guarantees any merchant, man, woman, standing or seated, the right to honest competition." Murmurs rose and aged senator scowled. Caleb's palms dampened. Then Captain Barnes stood. "I haul freight 1,200 miles a season. Their stations saved lives in the blizzard of 70. Pass the act." Pastor O'Brien added, "Their credit fed widows when banks would not." Voices stacked like lumber. The tide shifted. The vote rang out, unanimous. Gavels banged, applause thundered. Eleanor caught Caleb's gaze, emerald eyes bright with everything they'd clawed from dust and ash. He remembered blood on saloon boards, the fire's roar, Crow's rifle spark. All of it led here, this moment of ink on law made from sweat, bullets, and community. Governor Langley signed beneath Eleanor's flowing hand. Commissioner McKinley Walker, he said, smiling, pack your bags. The territory needs inspectors to enforce the statute. Position comes with an advisor's stipend, if you have someone in mind. Caleb's laugh echoed beneath the rotunda's domed ceiling. I ride cheap, Governor. That night they stood on the Capitol steps, Denver lights glittering like campfires scattered across the valley. A telegraph boy rushed up, breathless. Message from Dodge Creek, rail consortium threatening new tariffs. They're asking for the commissioner. Eleanor folded the slip, thoughtful. Caleb offered his arm. Wheat's ready for harvest. Fancy city folks shouldn't decide its price. She smiled, a spark, not of fire, but of purpose. Then we ride at dawn. Behind them, the prairie sprawled into darkness, wind carrying the scent of fresh rain and distant trails. Proof that on broken ground, new roots still had miles to grow.